Greetings, Bravings. Today, we will be looking at the story of Bridget Cleary, the last witch to be burned alive in Ireland. And I won't be doing this voice, so I can't stop doing it. Hang on a minute.
Okay, I've had a drink and now that is much better. Now, although the Irish Times refer to her as the last witch, she was never actually accused of casting spells or consorting with the devil, but of being something entirely inhuman, a fairy or changeling. First, let us set the scene. Ireland in 1895, a nation still under colonial British rule, and itself experiencing great change as oral traditions give way to a new age of newspapers and railways. In Ireland and in the UK, the question of home rule has become a hotly debated topic, and these things would all play a part in the events about to be told, and how they would be reported to the wider world. Bridget Boland was a dressmaker's apprentice when she met a cooper named Michael Cleary. And I'm assuming it's pronounced Clary because of a children's rhyme that goes, "Are you a witch, or are you a fairy, or are you the wife of Michael Cleary?" And yes, indeed, the couple married and moved to live with Bridget's parents in her townland of Ballivadley. Oh, my family is going to be so mad at me for not knowing how to pronounce all these Irish names.
Ballivadley.
Are you just pronouncing it phonetically? Or...
Ballivadley.
Oh no, that would do. In any case, because Bridget's father had been a labourer in his youth, they were entitled to a cottage, which, although much nicer than the much older homes in the village, seems few locals are interested in. This was due to their belief that the cottage had been built on a fairy wing fort. Those are ancient earthworks that date back to the early Middle Ages or older, that all dot the Irish landscape. But belief in fairies doesn't seem to have influenced the couple, at least not yet. Michael continued to work as a cooper, while Bridget raised chickens and sold eggs. She also had her own Cena sewing machine, which I guess was like the equivalent of having an Xbox Series X back then. The point is that by the standards of where and when they lived, they seemed to be doing quite well for themselves. At least that's how it appeared to their neighbours. Except that is for the fact that despite their several years of marriage, the couple were still without children, which would have been expected at the time, and possibly that played a role in what would unfold. On March 4th, 1895, Bridget went out to deliver eggs, a 2 or 3 mile walk on a bitterly cold day with the land still covered in snow from the day before. It is possible that on her trips she visited several spots where fairies were believed to reside, as she was known to have a fascination with the creatures. In any case, when Bridget returned home she had chills. She seemed unable to warm up, and spent the next day in bed shivering and complaining of pain in her head. During the next week, as Bridget lay bedridden, Michael and Patrick went several times to summon a doctor, who did not visit until the following Wednesday, diagnosing her with nervous excitement and slight bronchitis. That same afternoon a priest visited, administering last rites just in case. But, even if neither the doctor or the priest truly believed that her life was in danger, the priest's actions may have reinforced in Michael the idea that his wife could be lost. Jack Dunn was a local Shonkai? That. A bearer of old law. It was likely he that convinced Michael that whatever was lying sick and weak and possibly dying was not his wife Bridget at all. She was alive and well with the fairies, and had been replaced by a changeling. He convinced Michael to visit Dennis Ganny, a witch or fairy doctor, which Michael duly did. When Bridget's cousin Joanna Burke came to visit, she found Bridget being pinned to her bed by 4 men, including Dunn and Michael, force-feeding Bridget a concoction of herbs boiled in new milk. Shouting was heard from outside. "Take it, you witch, or I'll kill you!" And "Away with you! Come home, Bridget Boland, in the name of God!" The men then held her over a fireplace as they repeatedly questioned, "Are you Bridget Boland, wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God?" Although several witnessed this, including Joanna, they were all too terrified to do anything to help. Thankfully, by midnight, this ritual seemed to be over. Joanna described Bridget as wild and deranged. Again, she was probably terrified. But otherwise, things seemed to settle down somewhat, at least for a while. The following morning, the priest, at Michael's request, said Mass in Bridget's room to banish any remaining evil spirits. Now, it was Friday, March 15th, and Bridget did seem to be recovering from her illness and was out of bed. She told Michael that she could see peelers out the window, peelers meaning police, and that he should leave her alone, to which he responded by emptying a chamber pot over her. It's nasty. Nevertheless, she got dressed to give her courage when she would go among people, and joined her husband and several guests for tea. She asked for milk, which may have rekindled Michael's suspicions, as fairies were said to yearn for fresh milk. She then taunted him further, saying, "Your mother used to go with the fairies, and that is why you think I'm going with them." Michael then snapped, forcing her to eat bread and jam as he once again demanded she say who she was. Twice she answered that she was Bridget Boland, wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God. But the third time, exhausted of the question, she refused to answer. It was then that Michael threw her to the ground, stripped her to her chemise, poured oil, and set her ablaze. He told the horrified onlookers that, "It is not my wife. I am not going to keep an old witch in place of my wife, so I must get my wife back. It is not Bridget I am burning." Later, he threatened people with a knife, demanding they help bury the body. Bridget was reported missing, and police spent the next week searching. She was found in a shallow grave a quarter mile uphill from the cottage. Rather than flee, Michael had spent 3 nights in a row waiting by a fairy wing fort on hang on. Whatever's on screen. In any case, he was possibly still clinging to the hope that his real wife would return. He and several others who had been present during Bridget's illness and subsequent torture were arrested and charged. During the trial, Mr. Justice O'Brien, was that his actual name? So that's a great example of nominative determinism there. Anyway, he said, "This most extraordinary case demonstrated a degree of darkness in the mind, not just of one person, but of several. A moral darkness, even religious darkness, the disclosure of which had come with surprise on many persons." After the trial, Michael was found guilty of manslaughter. Judge and jury obviously convinced that he had acted out of a genuine belief that it wasn't his real wife that he'd murdered. Meanwhile, pro-colonial British newspapers seized upon the story as proof that the rural Irish were still primitive, superstitious people who needed the responsible British looking after them. Because, of course, the Victorians were never known for bouts of murder and mass hysteria. while nationalist newspapers did their best to remind everyone that this was an isolated incident. Among the Clarys' neighbours there had been whispers that their marriage was not as pleasant as it appeared from outside. Rumours that Bridget may have been having an affair. Now, whether this had any basis in fact or just jealousy that the couple were relatively well off, we'll likely never know for sure at this point. Modern psychology has suggested that Michael may have had a brief psychotic disorder brought on by the stress of Bridget becoming ill, manifesting as Capgras syndrome, a psychiatric disorder in which a person holds a delusion that a friend, spouse, parent, or other close family member, or pet, has been replaced by an identical imposter. Named after Joseph Capgras, a French psychiatrist, on the case of a Frenchwoman, Madame Macabre, another great name, who complained that corresponding doubles had taken the places of her husband and other people she knew. Michael was released after 15 years in prison. Then he emigrated to the UK and then to Canada. And that, my friends, is where this story ends. I'll of course link to some articles and further reading in the description. Like, comment and subscribe, I guess. This is a quite new channel. Just read the description, the about page there. It says I've been around since 2011, but it's actually only this last month that I've started uploading videos frequently, and I'm hoping to get one out every week. But for now, away with you.